Hi everybody, I'm Trin Johnson and welcome to Dust in My Eye. So today I'm doing a talking head video, which is not my norm, but I thought that was the best way to address the subject matter that I have here. And I have some notes, so if you see me looking down or turning pages, that's what it is. I just want to make sure I cover everything. So if you're new here, thanks for joining us. And if you've been here for a while, so glad to see you back. And anyway, on to the subject. I am not the watercolor police. I want to start out by saying I'm not trying to speak ill of my fellow artists and YouTubers who have done do's and don'ts videos. But and I understand why they do them and why they're titled that way. And I get that. But it kind of bothers me because I've been thinking about this for weeks, months. I say it in my class all the time. I'm not the watercolor police. Do what you want to do what you need to do. Don't let that hinder your creativity. So basically, there are no don'ts. There are definitely things that you may do that don't work out how you expected it to or wanted it to. And it's good to know how they happened and why they happened and how to keep it from happening again if you don't want it to happen again. Or maybe you want to encourage it happening and you want to know why it happened for that reason. That's the crux of it. Your own personal taste. The ability to experiment and find out what you enjoy, both visually and creatively. For instance, it's helpful to know what happens if you use too much water, or if you don't have enough pigment, or if you have too little water, and the paint doesn't move the same, and certain techniques don't work. But I think videos touting watercolor mistakes are just limiting your creativity and experimentation. It implies that you've done something bad and undesirable when that might be exactly what you need to do to make interesting, unique art. If you become so concerned with doing the right things and the right way, you aren't going to learn nearly as much as if you would just experiment and have the so-called undesirable effects happen. Figuring out what you like and how to achieve it takes lots and lots of experimentation, trial and error, and most importantly, brush miles. It really is the only way to get the results you want consistently. When it comes to the do's and don'ts, such as you can never use white or you can never use black, that's only really true if you're entering your work in a show that has very specific rules about things like that. And I don't even know if black is in there, but white might be a thing. I really don't know. But while I do understand that mixing your own black will make a more interesting black, there are some really great blacks out there, like Daniel Smith's Lunar Black. It's a highly granulating black, and it's really cool. And McCracken Black has 7 different pigments in it. So that one breaks down and does really cool stuff. And then there's Lamp Black that feathers when you use it wet on wet. It makes beautiful fur. As for white, while I tend to use gouache if I want white, a lot of colors already have white in them, like buff titanium, lavender, shell pink. So what does it matter? If you want to add white to your colors to get the color you want, then go ahead and experiment with white. Then there's the whole light fast issue. I do come at this from an alcoholic artist point of view, where none of it is really light fast. But unless you're exhibiting and selling your artwork, it probably won't matter if you use opera pink. I am not personally making artwork to last hundreds of years. I do want it to last the lifetime of the client that buys it, within reason. I am not in the high-end art market. They aren't paying that much for my stuff to feel that need, that I have to have it last forever. Most of us aren't in the high-end art market. I'm not going to twist myself into a pretzel checking the light fastness on every material that I put on a painting. My inks, when I paint them, are sprayed with multiple coats of fixative and UV spray, sometimes a top coat too, and they come with a note about not hanging them in direct sunlight. I haven't had any of the ones in my house fade, and they've been hanging there for about 7 years. And I've never had a watercolor fade. Now, not that it doesn't happen, and it can be devastating if it does, but generally speaking, it is not that important to me personally to go through all the trouble of making sure I only use light, fast paints. But if that makes you happy, if you like to track that kind of stuff, then by all means do it because it makes you happy. And it's about your artwork, your creativity, what makes you happy as an artist. But don't feel you are less of a serious artist if you don't do that. Which brings me to another point. If I think my artwork would benefit from a little white gouache or some colored pencil, I'm going to throw it on there. If I want to put a little ink on it, I'm going to throw it on there. Again, unless I'm entering it in a show where it has to be a certain thing to be watercolor, then I'm not going to get that picky. Now, there is a category of mixed media, and I get that. And if I did it, I don't know if it's a percentage or what, but the little bits that I use, I don't feel put it in that category. It doesn't matter. It's my painting, and the watercolor police aren't going to come and drag me away in handcuffs. Again, if you are entering a show, read the rules for that show. I don't consider myself a mixed media artist. I do like to use whatever I want to in a piece. I have only really done what I would consider mixed media in my sketchbook. And it was a lot of fun. I know the do's and don'ts videos are aimed at beginners, but I think they're doing themselves a disservice if they follow them too closely, instead of just painting with their paint and seeing what happens. It can be helpful if you have something happening and you don't know why it's happening and you want it to happen or don't want it to happen. So that's where they come in handy. But we learn so much more if we just experiment and make mistakes. One painter's oh no moment is another painter's beautiful bloom. If I'm going to get all policey, it's with your supplies and materials. Use what you have or what you can afford, but understand that you can't really be your best using low quality supplies. There are a lot of good student grade paints out there. I started with artist quality myself and just got a few colors. That's an option. But the same token, if having all the pretty colors in the paint box make you happy and get your creative juices flowing, then that's what's right for you. And in general, I am certainly that way. So same thing with brushes. Really high quality brushes are great. But if you can't afford them, there's a lot of nice cheaper brushes out there. There's a lot of mid-range brushes and some really cheap brushes. And I tend to buy vegan as much as possible. And I have some really lovely brushes. And I have some really cheap brushes. And I like those too. So I think brushes can be a space where you gradually acquire better brushes. But the place I would put my money is in paper because 100% cotton paper makes a big difference, at least some of the time. It's trial and error to see really what you like and what works for you. But don't limit yourself to cheap paper and say, well, I can't do this. It's not doing what they said it would do. It's not working like I want it to. And expect cellulose paper to give you what you're watching someone do on 100% cotton paper. It's just not going to happen. I prefer cold press paper. A lot of people like hot press paper. It definitely has its place, and I do use it for certain things. But really, you've got to kind of figure out what works for you. Sketchbooks are a great place to get lots of brush miles in, and they range from cellulose to 100% cotton. And you can have both. And when you're just swatching paint, do it in a cellulose one. But you're not going to see how that paint moves on cotton in that cellulose sketchbook. So just keep that in mind. I would encourage you to use cotton paper even when you're experimenting. It's not much of an experiment if it's always on different paper than you intend to actually paint a painting on. But again, don't let the wrong paint, brushes, or paper stop you from painting. In conclusion, you should paint like there's no rules. Don't let anybody make you think there are. I guess I really don't like rules, and I really don't like absolutes, especially when it comes to my creativity. So that's my piece, and I hope you liked it, and I hope you got something out of it. And if you did, you could hit that like button. That would be wonderful. And thank you so much for watching. If you would like to, please check out my Etsy shop where I have prints of my artwork along with cute little monsters and other fun stuff for sale.